Good afternoon. Welcome to our third installment of the Industry Lecture Series, A Successful Career in Engineering Consulting and Design. My name is Tom Leggio, and we're happy to present along with IEEE this lecture series. If there's any thoughts or concerns after the lecture series as well too, we'll include the email contacts that you can reach out and you can ask those questions and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. I would like to introduce now Dr. Beheshti for some opening remarks. Dr. Beheshti.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to this third event of the Industry Leader Talk Series, hosted by the New York Institute of Technology's College of Engineering and Computing Sciences. My name is Babak Beheshti, Dean of the College. This series is co-hosted by our college as well as the IEEE Region 1. My thanks go to Mr. Ed Palacio, the IEEE Region 1 Director. Our audience today is composed of IEEE professionals and student members from across the Northeastern United States, as well as College of Engineering current students and alumni, and a number of distinguished guests. I would like to thank the College of Engineering's Dean's Executive Advisory Board, particularly its chair, Dr. Robert DeFazio, who has been instrumental in organizing this series. Today's industry leader is in this series is Mr. Michael Lantier, PE lead AP, Assistant Vice President and Senior Discipline Engineer at H2M Architects Plus Engineers. The talk is titled A Successful Career in Engineering Consulting and Design. Please review Michael's bio sketch available on the event website. Michael is also a member of the College of Engineering's Dean's Executive Advisory Board. Without any further ado, I will pass it to Michael for his talk. Michael?
Hi, thank you very much, Dean. Thank you, Tom, for having me as part of this presentation. So I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen and I'll start really talking about my experiences. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here. And when the dean and the advisory board approached me to put together a presentation, and they told me that it was for current students and alumni of a school that's obviously very dear to my heart, a school that I graduated from that provided me with a degree in electrical and computer engineering. I absolutely accepted the opportunity. And even a little furthermore, I'm glad that my career at this point is considered successful, although I still do have a number of years left and a lot of growth that comes along with it. So I'm going to go and share my screen. Again, thank you everyone for having me. So really what I'm going to discuss as part of this presentation is, my experiences, what my education has kind of brought me to, and how have I gotten into the position that I am now, and what does my position right now, really look like. Right now, I currently provide support to numerous K through 12 school districts throughout the tri-state area, as well as higher education. But my career has taken, a number of different turns along the way as I've progressed along my path. I'll talk to you kind of about my professional engineering experience. I am licensed in the state of New York. I do hold United States Green Building Council LEED certification as well. I'm going to talk about my experiences and what my day-to-day interactions and relationships look like with other engineers, architects, contractors. Really, what are my day-to-day duties, and what are my expectations as an engineer in this field? As Thomas mentioned too, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer any of them at the conclusion of the presentation. So basically, with my experience in consulting, I have many longstanding relationships across a lot of service markets, which I'm going to get into in a lot of different disciplines throughout architectural and engineering. My experience basically has resulted in efficient project management, expedited decision making, which ultimately saves time for my clients and saves them money through construction by using my resourcefulness, my network, my connections, and my experience as well. Like I mentioned before, I do hold a bachelor's in electrical and computer engineering from NYIT, and I do have an MBA in finance as well. So moving on to my personal education, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't necessarily say that I stuck to the same path that other people that go into engineering do. So believe it or not, I was a pre-physical therapy major, and I was actually going to college for physical therapy. I was enrolled in Quinnipiac, and decided basically a week before I was supposed to go that career path I didn't think was for me at the time, for a number of reasons. Primarily as part of that program, you had to do a number, actually probably a couple hundred volunteer hours in the field in order to be accepted. And through those volunteer hours and through the application process, I decided that it just was not the right career path. I liked something that was a little bit more analytical, something that would, require me to really use my experience and use my degree and use, math and science basically to perform my duties. So I decided at that point, I was, 16, 17 years old. So I decided at that point that it was best to really take whatever courses I could that were really in the applied science and the applied, the math sector. And it ended up, I did end up getting an associate's. And during that time, as I struggled, like many, newly high school graduates do, I struggled with trying to decide what to do with the rest of my life. What was my career going to look like? So at that point, I reached out to whatever guidance really was available. I spoke to guidance counselors, career counselors, and had things put in front of me, and I took a couple tests, and one of the items that popped up was electrical engineering. So I decided to do my own research and see, what the options were. And what I found out right off the bat, and is so true about many engineering programs, is that degree just really opens doors for you. An engineering degree, regardless whether it's electrical, mechanical, chemical, it just provides you with that background, and it provides you with the ability to critically think through difficult and complex problems. And that's kind of why I chose that direction. And electrical and computer engineering really just provided that additional opportunity that, at that moment, I didn't know the exact direction I wanted to go in, but I knew it involved critical thinking, and I knew it involved math and science, and an electrical engineering degree would then further open up more doors, as my career progressed. My next step in education, which when I was actually employed by my current company, which is H2M, and I'll get into that in a little bit more, I decided that I wanted to continue my education. And like many other engineers will probably face, the decision is, what's the right path for me? Does an MBA make sense? Does a master's in electrical engineering or another type of course make more sense for me? And, again, I talked to as many people as I could that were engineers that had some kind of continuing education degree. And for my line of work, and for where my experience really was, and where my focus, where I really thought my focus needed to be, had to do with finance. So for me, the direction was obtaining that MBA. Some additional testing that I have done, or some additional continuing education that I have completed, are my EIT exam and my PE license for the state of New York. These are specific exams that are primarily used in the consulting industry. It's basically, you take an exam. The EIT is an exam that can ask you any questions from an accredited engineering program in the United States. So it focuses really on every topic available in engineering that you may learn in an engineering course or an engineering program. The PE exam, once you pass the EIT exam, EIT stands for Engineer in Training, and there's also another abbreviation, Fundamentals of Engineering. I'm not exactly sure why it has two names, but I guess just to confuse things even more. Kind of like for us electrical engineers, how there's no such thing as two phase, but there is single phase and three phase, just to help complicate the matters a little bit more, I guess. And then after I gained some additional experience, I believe it was 4 years, you can apply to take your professional engineer's exam, which is focused specifically in your trade, and in my case, in electrical engineering. And then at one point, sustainability was a big focus with my career and my path. So I decided to go and get my LEED accreditation from the United States Green Building Council. And that's basically an accreditation that says that you've passed and you're familiar with minimal standards for providing an energy efficient and a sustainable building or other parts of construction. My education does continue with my professional engineer's license. I am required by the state to take a number of hours. I believe it's 12 hours every year in continuing education, which is absolutely warranted, and it's something that every engineer would recommend because technologies continually change, codes continually change, so you do need to be really up to speed with the ever-changing environment. So my work experience, and again, this is really just so anyone that is attending this webinar kind of gets a feeling for who I am and kind of what it took me to get into this position. Like many other people, I started working at a young age. Typical high school jobs. My first job was working maintenance for a local day camp, and then it was being a golf caddy and a couple other jobs from here or there. But then when I knew that I wanted to go to school for specifically electrical engineering, I decided that I needed to get something that was really more related to what my degree was going to be in. Something like that. I figured it really can only help. There's a ton of benefits to be able to put really anything on your resume as far as work experience goes. But then when you're applying for your first position out of college, it's even better to have something on your resume that's directly related. And sometimes that's something that people struggle with, is getting that first job and getting some experience. So in my case, it was working for an electrical contractor. And I can tell you that absolutely paid off in the position that I'm in now, because I learned a lot of hands-on things that still help me understand and help me to relate to contractors that I deal with in my daily routines. At one point, so I guess to back up a little bit, so I did attend night school for a while. I was able to do that with NYIT's programs. Luckily, the way that the scheduling worked out for my last year and a half or so, I was able to attend night school, and I got another opportunity at a local company that did power staging and power supply, and they were understanding of the time that was required to go through a type of degree program like electrical and computer engineering. And they were able to, offer me full-time employment for the last year or so as I was finishing up my degrees. And I continued once I graduated, working for that company for a couple years. And again, at some point, I wanted to make a change with my career. And I didn't know exactly what that change was. And for some reason, some things just happened. And at one point, I got a call from a relative, my sister, believe it or not. She was going to a local school, and she said, hey, my school is having a technical career fair. I think that you should stop by. You just never know who you're going to meet. And of course, it was after a full day of work. I was exhausted, but I took her advice, and I went to a local career fair at a local school for technology graduates. And believe it or not, someone from the company that I'm currently employed with, and I've been employed with now for 15 years, kind of saw me from across the room and pulled me over to her booth and basically wouldn't let me leave unless I agreed to sit down for an interview with this company. So it's kind of about putting yourself out there and getting into just getting your name and getting yourself really out there to meet other people you just don't know. And that's kind of a quick recommendation that I would make right now based upon my experience. It's the internships, it's the networking, it's open communication, especially with the consulting field, which I'll go into in a little bit more. Communication is a big part of it. You're talking with other engineers, you're talking with architects, you're talking with contractors, you're talking with building maintenance supervisors, you're talking with owners. The type of person that you're talking with varies significantly. So the communication part, I highly recommend that people try to take advantage of it and try to work on to perfect it. So some pictures that I do have on the screen are just some pictures of the company that are H2M architects and engineers that I work with. We have some pictures of the exterior of our building, you know, our main entrances, our working spaces, some of our larger meeting rooms, just to give everyone an idea of what it would look like for a type of organization that specializes in what H2M does. So before I get into H2M, I'll just talk about kind of what my experience is and the direction that I do typically see electrical engineers moving towards. And I've been part of our interview process at H2M for a number of years as well. So I've met many, you know, future graduates as well as you know, graduates, and we were able to talk about kind of what their desires are and what their wants are. But basically, we see electrical engineers that are going towards a PC board design and testing, more so the electronics side of electrical engineering, something like you learn in your labs as you go through the program. That was similar to what I did during my first job. My first job while I was working during the day and going to school at full time. And there's no pros and cons to either one. It really depends on the type of work that you prefer to be doing. We typically find that people that are engineers that are doing PC board and design are more so in the laboratory setting. They're behind their computers. They're doing circuit analysis, circuit board testing. And for me, I wanted to be more out, you know, in the public. I wanted to have more direct client interaction and direct client relationships. And that's why I went towards the architectural and engineering consulting side of things, because it would just provide me with more opportunities to be involved with different types of projects. Another area is finance and analytics. I'm sure many people may frown upon the finance industry from pulling such great talent and such great students, but the reality is, I mean, it's the way that our brains are developed and our analytical thinking is developed, and it's provided. It's been very, very beneficial for these banks or these hedge funds to hire engineers as well. Some other areas: software programming, communications, utilities. So basically what I'm trying to say is, when you have an engineering degree, regardless what it's in, it's a very sought after degree to have, and it's going to be up to the individual person to decide really what their likes are. And luckily right now, it's a competitive job market for engineers. So you don't necessarily have to settle for a position that you may not be, that may not be really what you're looking for. So I'll quickly go through H2M so you can have a better understanding of what it is like to work in the architectural and engineering side of things. So H2M is considered to be a multidisciplined architectural and engineering consulting firm. And when I first interviewed with the company, I had absolutely no idea what that meant, or how they could possibly have the clients that they have and process the workflow. So, you know, I met with the organization, and you know, they kind of you know, filled me in, and I had a better understanding before I accepted the position. So basically, our company was founded in 1933 on professional excellence, hard work, and integrity. Right now, we have over 470 employees, 91 professional engineers, 65 registered architects, and about 38 LEED accredited professionals. When I say multidisciplined, what that means is that we are really involved with every type of architect and engineer that really is available. In-house, we have basically every type of engineer that you see on my screen right now. We probably have an employee that has a degree in almost every engineering discipline, except maybe nuclear engineering. And the reason that we do this, I'm sorry, before we get to the next slide, another side of the engineering is environmental testing, and my firm has a division that does environmental testing as well as insurance inspections, and really anything that would require a professional to analyze and provide a recommendation. So H2M is located in, our headquarters are in Melville, which is centrally located on Long Island. We have about 8 locations throughout the tri-state area, and this basically allows us to respond quickly and efficiently to a wide range of clients that are typically in the tri-state area, although we do have a number of clients that are throughout the United States as well. I included a couple pictures of some of our clients, but when I say that our client list is long, it's kind of an understatement. At one point or another, we do get involved with many different types of businesses and industries and markets. The markets that we're primarily involved with, like I mentioned before, my primary experience is in the education market. And that's because of really just where my career took me. I did a number of project management positions in H2M and worked with many clients across the markets that you see on my screen. But my heart and really my skills were really best honed towards assisting education clients, and that's primarily where I find myself now, and it's assisting really K through 12 school districts throughout the tri-state area. On the engineering and the architectural side, it's amazing how much work and how much effort goes into running a school district from the facility side of things. But H2M as a whole, we have emergency services market. We have a market that's dedicated to the energy sector, public agencies, municipalities, insurance companies. We have a private real estate division as well, and water and wastewater. So it is a little bit daunting to see how many clients and how many markets a company like H2M is involved with. But what keeps us, really at the top of our game is being so diversified. Every market is not, does not have linear growth or linear decline as the economy goes up and down. One market might be up, one market might be down, and this allows us to be a diversified firm, and it also allows our employees to have the experience and to get an understanding of really whatever market they show an interest in. That's one thing that is good about H2M, at least, is that we are very open and we're very collaborative, and we really promote communication. And if you see something that you want to go after, by all means. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So as I get into really the typical day of what I deal with, and it kind of is what really keeps me going, there is never a dull moment. I would like to be able to, sit down and relax a little bit sometimes and be able to coast, but it's kind of the nature of the business that we're in. We have a lot of different clients that have a lot of different needs, and there's a lot of problems as it relates to construction and infrastructure. So my day really does, it moves, that's for sure. And it's something that I knew before I got into this type of business that it was going to happen. I wanted something that was fast paced, something that had me directly in front of clients, something that really had me problem solving, and something that was gratifying. So basically constant coordination with other disciplines. I mean, today alone, I'm sure I've spoken with numerous architects, structural engineers, mechanical engineers on a number of different projects. Again, just solving our clients' problems and processing their workflow along. Client communication is something that's regular as well in my line of work, where clients know they can contact me to get things done if they need to, or if they have a difficult problem. A good example of this is really the reopening of schools over the last year and going through the pandemic. H2M was really able to assist a large number of our clients through many different aspects, whether it was seating in school districts, to make sure that we had proper spacing as per the CDC or the state guidelines or the local Department of Health, and helping our clients just navigate different codes and the requirements that were ever changing. We had the opportunity to work very closely with a number of clients across many of the industries on the HVAC and air filtration aspect of their reopening plans. And again, that's just really one example of the industry. Another example is storm damage. Hurricane Sandy, since a firm like H2M is multidisciplinary, I mean, we had wastewater engineers helping when there was problems on the island with some of the wastewater infrastructure. Same thing with water, and we had our architects deployed and our engineers deployed, looking at a lot of the damage, and we had our insurance market helping the insurance companies inspect. So to say that there's a boring day, it would be nice every once in a while, but they're very, very few and far between, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Some of the pictures on the screen are just some screenshots that we have of some of our work. You can see a building foundation on the left, a conduit duct bank in the middle, a multi-purpose sports field on the bottom right, photovoltaics on the bottom right, water treatment plant in the middle on the right, and some electrical infrastructure on the top right. So some of the challenges and the rewards, I did previously discuss on the last slide, but basically it's never dull, and that does become a challenge because it's tough. Sometimes you feel like you're swimming and you might not get to the surface, but that's also something that a lot of the people that are successful in this industry really love, and that helps them thrive. The ability to really help your clients. The challenges are competitive markets, and you'll see that in many lines of business. Competitive markets, competitive other competitors that are in the same markets. It can make your work challenging for sure. Fast pace, this day and age where technology is at the forefront, and our wireless, our WebExes like we're doing right now, it's just everything is very fast paced. Your clients want answers, your contractors want answers, and sometimes they're screaming at you why you didn't answer an email even though they sent it to you only 15 minutes ago. That you're going to see across many industries, not just architectural and engineering consulting. Right now, it's kind of just where technology and the ease of communication and accessibility really has brought us. Demanding schedule, that can happen again in every line, every industry, but maybe that's a good thing. If you're sought after and your services are sought after, then you are going to have a demanding schedule, and it's up to the individual and the managers to make sure that work-life balance is maintained. As you learn quickly, not everyone is the same way. Someone prefers to spend more time at work. Some people prefer to spend more time at home, and you have to find that balance so it really works for everyone. So some of the major rewards in my line of work, one of the biggest one is project completion. Seeing a large project completed, whether it's an actual building or whether it's a really difficult electrical service installation or a very high tech information or equipment deployment across a town or a school district, but to see that project completed and see it up and running, and to know that you were really the driving force behind that whole project, putting all the details together and lining up all the contractors and confirming that the finances were in place from all the different available sources. When it finally does hit, it is a very, very rewarding feeling. And the same thing goes with successful projects, because not every project, although you complete them, may not be successful, but the ones where your client really appreciates the final result and they're happy with the final result, that really is a rewarding aspect. Content clients, again, that goes really to successful projects. Again, for me, that's a driving force. When a client says they appreciate your time, they really like working with you, or they understand your time is valuable. The next one, difficult problem solved. That was really my driving force to become an engineer. I didn't want a career where I could sit back and put my feet up and kind of just coast for the rest of my life. I wanted something where I felt like that I was being challenged and that I can use my skills, I could use my education to be able to solve these difficult problems. And finally, a stable career. Engineering in general right now, and it's my understanding that engineers have not always been sought after, and there were a lot more available engineers in the workforce. But right now it's been a very stable career, and I'm lucky to be with a growing, understanding company as well. So for me, that's something that really is rewarding with this education. So really, as I get towards the end of my presentation, it was asked, if you have students on the webinar, or if you have recent graduates, what are some advice? What are a couple? What's your elevator pitch to how you would advise them to help their career and kind of help them to make the best decisions? And what I mentioned before is, that internship and that work experience, it's not always easy to find it, and I understand that, but there's a way to find something related to what you want to do, as long as you're willing to get out there, and as long as you do some of the legwork, and you do a little research on that company or that organization, and you're able to express how you can help that organization and how you can help them progress. A lot of times you'll end up getting at least a connection, or you just never know what it will turn into. The biggest thing is communications and networking, and I can't say that enough. And I know a lot of my peers in my own organization will make fun of me for saying it, because it's something that I tell when we mentor students here as well, and it's something that I tell them. It's just you just never know when you're going to either meet someone that's able to help with your career, or someone that you can help with their career, or just a connection where two people are able to work more efficiently and then one on an idea. So I highly recommend is taking that opportunity to meet peers and meet potential clients, meet potential companies that may be willing to hire you. And the last thing really is on your career, it's your decision. You have the ability to advocate for yourself. At some point in your career, you might find that you're the person that is going to really promote you the best. You can't rely on other people for either advice or promotions. If you know that you have what it takes to get to the next level, you have the ability and you're able to prove it, then there's no reason that you shouldn't go out and advocate for yourself to really get that position that you want to go after. So that really concludes what I had in mind to talk about. But if there's any questions or anything else that anyone wants to bring up that I might have forgot to mention, I have absolutely no problems discussing it further. Or you can send me an email, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
So now we could get into Q&A.
Okay, so I'll read it off first. Michael, the first question we have: would you recommend others to pursue the professional engineering license?
So that's a good question. And when I graduated with my degree, it really wasn't something that was discussed in great detail. And again, it's a personal opinion, but it's more so driven to the field that you're going into. I would highly recommend that anyone that is considering consulting engineering at least takes the first part of the exam, which is the EIT, the Engineer and Training Exam, also called the Fundamentals of Engineering Exam. And the reason that I would make that recommendation is really because, like I said, they can ask any question from an accredited engineering program. So while it's fresh in your minds from either recently graduating, or I believe you can take it during your senior year in college as well, I would recommend taking it at that point. And then there's about I think a 4-year period before you can actually sit for the professional engineer's exam. But as long as you take that first part and you pass it, it's good for, I believe, indefinitely to take that second part.
Great, thank you, Michael. Michael, we have another question, 2-part question. When did you work your first internship, and what did you learn?
So I would say my first internship was when I worked for the electrical contractor. They weren't considering it an internship. They were just considering it my position, which was an electrician. What was it? It was an electrician's assistant. So I was the one that had to run and get the wiring and make sure it was the right size and install things across, commercial buildings and residents as well. And at that point, it was when I was in college. I recommend, though, trying to get your first internship as early as possible. And it's even a little bit deeper than that in experience. So a really good program that I would promote to high schoolers is something called ACE Mentorship, which is pretty prominent in the tri-state area. And it's where architectural and engineering high school students can become part of this program where they are actively involved with architects and engineers for about a 6-month period. I believe it's once a week or once every other week. And you get a hands-on experience for what they do, and through that program you'll meet other students that are in the same position. But I would suggest trying to get an internship really as soon as you can, or getting a job that's related to the field that you think you want to go into, as early as you can in your career. So that can be during high school or your college years. I wouldn't recommend waiting until you're graduated from college, because at that point, I mean, at least me personally, I'd want to, hit the ground running with a full-time position. And when I say internship too, many internships are paid. I'm not saying that you should go out and get an unpaid internship, but if that opportunity is there as well, and it's a fit for you, that's an option too.
Thank you. Next question. What is the difference between the tasks of an engineer working in a company and a consulting engineer working in the same project?
So the typical tasks of an engineer working in a company similar to H2M, and again, there's a lot of different levels of skill and experience, but you'll have a lot of, let's give an intern as an example. An intern may be someone that's handling some more of the clerical items, or someone that's doing very basic layouts that's being overseen by like a what we would call more of like a staff level or a senior level engineer or architect. And that senior level engineer or architect will be making project level decisions depending on who the client is, but you'd be working for a client, or you'd be working under another H2M employee that would be like a client contact to determine what the best course of action is for a specific situation. And it would be your role as that staff level, or as that project manager level, or that senior engineer level, to get that information onto a document. And at H2M, you typically have it, or in consulting engineering, I shouldn't even say H2M, but in consulting engineering, you typically have, you're developing construction documents. And what those construction documents include are design drawings, which will show, the floor plan, the location of equipment, any specific details that you need to include, and then your project manual or your project specifications, which is printed out. It's a pretty thick book that includes all of the detailed information about the whole project, and it would include the contract for the project for an installing contractor. And a company, a consulting engineer or an architect will also bring those projects out to bid, to a public bid situation, or they'll oversee private contractors reviewing bids and providing construction costs for the specific project. A consulting, I'm not sure if I answered the question fully, so that's kind of what an engineer or an architect in my company would do, and a consulting engineer working on the same project. I mean, I guess where I would bring the rest of that question, and whoever posed this question, if I'm not answering it correctly, please feel free to post some more follow-up questions. But there are times where even myself or other employees of my firm do actually have to hire a subconsultant who in our case would be a subconsultant to a consulting engineer, to someone that has specific experience. An example would be like a stage rigging subconsultant. H2M just doesn't, we don't have anyone in-house that has that specific experience or that specific full-time experience to be able to provide detailed information on something so specific and something that is life safety related, such as like stage rigging. So in that case, we would hire a sub-consultant to work with us on a project.
Great, thank you. Next question. What was the deciding factor for you to move away from highly technical electrical engineering design to more business oriented?
It was for me. I hate to split hairs, but I would like to consider kind of what we do as highly technical. A lot of what we do is highly technical, and it's not just putting up walls or roofs or lighting. There's a lot of difficult aspects that get into it. But for me personally, the biggest driving factor was just that need and that want to be more active with other people. I wanted to make sure that I had a career where I could use my communication skills and just interact with a lot of different people at different levels for my entire career.
Great. Next question. Is a professional engineering license needed for a person with a doctorate degree in engineering?
So that's a good question that I don't think that I explained clearly. So the professional engineer's license is a state provided certification that basically states that you are qualified to design design and construction administer projects that are used for public use. So anything that's life safety, you're going to be required to get permitting. A professional engineer is required to review those final plans and basically sign off and certify that they're meeting the code requirements and that they're meeting life safety requirements. So in that case, if you were going to be that party signing and sealing and you did have a doctorate in engineering, yes, you still would need a professional engineer's license. The requirements for getting that professional engineer's license does change though, depending on your education. So if you have a doctorate, the time duration or that experience duration required to sit for the exam is significantly minimized.
Many consulting engineering companies merge over the years. Was H2M always the name of your company?
It's a good question too. So yes and no. So H2M has always been under the same ownership. We are an employee owned or a partnership. Basically, we have about 40 partners throughout the organization. We have always been under the same company, although our name has changed. We've rebranded a couple of times over the years. So what H2M stood for was Holzmacher, McClendon, and Murrell. They are the original three founders of the company from 1933 through about 1935. And as we grew in size and we grew in different markets and disciplines, we rebranded back in, I'm going to say, the late 70s. And if my CEO was on the call, he'd probably be yelling at me for not knowing all the specific details, but we were rebranded as H2M Group. And that really encompassed every type of engineer we felt at the time. And then about another 9 years ago, we rebranded again as H2M Architects and Engineers, and we dropped the group. But that's not to say that we don't acquire other firms either. Growth is going to happen through acquisitions at times as well. So no one has purchased H2M, but H2M does actively go out, and if an acquisition does make sense, it's not something we would stray away from.
Great. What advice would you give someone if they came upon a challenge that feels impossible to overcome? How would an individual handle such situation with their clients?
So you could do what I do, just crawl up into a ball and cry. So it happens. It happens often where issues come up where you just feel like that there's no good result or no good outcome. And luckily with the firm that I'm with, there's a lot of different people at different levels that have different experience. So you can turn to someone for advice and see if anyone has had that situation before and how they handled it and what the outcome was. So I would seek advice from others. There's times where no one has worked or had experience with an issue either that arises, and if that's the case, it comes to the communication and the networking. You typically have someone in your network that can at least you can reach out to ask a question or ask really what their advice or what they would suggest as the next step. So it happens, and somehow one way or another you get through it.
Are there any mentorship programs available to engineers who want to start their own engineering consulting firm?
There are no mentorship programs that that I'm aware of. What I would do is give some of my own personal recommendation, which has been kind of setting up my own mentors. What I've done is, I through networking and through people that I know and people that I know have other bigger networks than me and are really good at critical thinking and are good problem solvers. I would pose something like that to someone. And there's been a couple people in my life that I have turned to, family friends or a friend of a friend who is typically in that position that you think interests you. And that would really be my recommendation. Through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really powerful tool where you can search through people's experiences, and you could usually find someone that has some kind of experience. And truth be told, people like to talk about themselves. So if you want to reach out to someone and just say, hey, can we grab a drink? Can we grab coffee? Over the last year during the pandemic, it's been, can we hop on a 10-minute call just to find out their experiences and see if they have any advice. That's really would be my recommendation. As far as specific mentorship programs for consulting engineers, let me know if you find one.
Thank you, Michael. I believe this question, you pretty much answered it, but just in case if there's anything else you want to add to this one, what are some pieces of advice you would give to a person just starting their own engineering design, engineering consulting business? And what are some resources for such an individual to learn about starting a business?
So there's a ton of information out there about learning how to start your own business. For me personally, what I did, I went the road of MBA because I wasn't 100% sure where I saw my career projecting, and an MBA program gives you that experience. It teaches you a lot of the aspects about running and owning your own business, not specific to consulting engineering or consulting architecture, but it gives you the background behind finances, behind marketing, behind human resources, behind project management, behind time management. So that's something that I would personally always recommend. And then some other advice starting out, you don't if something doesn't go your way, don't let it stop you. You have to just keep going forward, and eventually it'll work out, or you're going to change your career path. That's kind of it. It is definitely a daunting task to try to start your own engineering design and consulting firm. Believe me, I've considered it in the past as well. And it's there's a lot to think about. You have to think about your client base and how are you going to grow as a company? How much time do you have available to put towards not only the work that you have, but growing your client base and growing the incoming workload.
We have a next question. I love presenting scientific insights and ideas, new concepts. I love finding options for solutions and selling them to people, and I'm good at it. Does it sound like I'm good at consulting?
So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a big part of consulting engineering is being able to be in front of people and presenting ideas and presenting solutions. That's not, I don't want anyone to think that's what it's all about, because there are plenty of employees that work in the consulting field that don't like to get out in front of other people, and that's fine. There's always positions for people that are just good, hard workers as well, even if they like to just, stay on their own and focus on their own work. But yeah, I mean, if you're someone that likes to be in front of people, that's kind of how I was. I liked the presenting aspect of things. I liked meeting new people. And again, that was a reward too. When you pitch your idea and you talk about the costs associated with it, and you have a client that accepts it, that's definitely a rewarding factor. So whoever posted that, yeah, I mean, if that's something that you like, I would look into it. A great, I don't know how much time we have, but a great example of that is, over the last, well, I say over the last few years, but H2M, one of our starts as a company was working for the water districts across Long Island, and as a company, our engineers for the last 80 so years have had the opportunities to work with really all across many industries, but a good example is the water industry, where new contaminants have been found, and our engineers have been able to pitch their solutions on how to remediate whatever that contaminant is. And it's become another hot topic with the quality of water on Long Island and Grumman and Bethpage over the last few years as well. But we have a number of engineers that focus on that, and they pitch their ideas, they'll pilot their ideas, and when the Department of Health reviews the results, their technologies sometimes are patented and are installed, not only across Long Island water district, sometimes it goes across the industry.
Thank you. Michael, this time I'm pretty sure that there's no further questions. We do know that you had mentioned earlier about LinkedIn. Do you mind sharing your LinkedIn as well?
Sure. Do you want me to put that screen back up? I saw someone commented on that as well. Does that help if I share my screen again?
That'd be great. Either that, or we could just put it right in the chat, and we have all the participants as well too. Whatever works best for you.
Yep. I can copy it. I'll copy it and put it right into the chat.
All panelists, you have the email, and we also have Michael's LinkedIn as well.
My email is pretty straightforward. First initial, Mike. So it's mlantier@h2m.com, and it's the number 2.
Perfect. So if there's no further questions, I would like to pass it back off to Dr. Beheshti.
Thank you, Tom. So thank you, Michael, for great talk. Also great questions. Thanks for being a great audience. Thank you for participating in this event. My thanks go to colleagues who made this event happen. Dr. Rob DeFazio, Dean Jane Polizzi, Ms. Carmen Marmo Savinetti, and of course our irreplaceables, Ms. Sarah McCuff and Mr. Tom Leggio. Please tune in for our next talk on April 12th, 5 to 6 p.m., where our own Dr. Robert DeFazio presents a talk titled 5G Wireless Technology Expectations and Deployment Status. Be well.